What's the most horrible thing you have done as a kid, without realizing how bad it was until you grew up? I lugged around a copy of Mein Kampf in middle school because I thought it made me look well read. My cat scratched me, so I punished it by locking it in my bedroom drawer all day, just like my mum grounded me to my room if I was naughty. Realized a few years later that it wasn't quite the same. The cat was fine BTW. When I was in 2nd grade, my school employed a buddy program where they paired younger children with the bigger kids so that everyone could learn trust and responsibility or summit, I don't know. I was paired with a 6th grader named Gretchen and we got along fine. So fine. In fact, she invited me to play tag with her friends after school one day. Me, a 2nd grader, playing tag with 6th graders. I had really arrived in the world. But I was anxious that the big kids would view me as a child, rather than a peer, and so, hopped up on social interaction and the high of feeling accepted by your betters. I decided to be cool. I am not cool. Gretchen's best friend was a stockily built girl named Lauren. Lauren got tagged. I saw my chance to make an edgy joke and screamed out, "The fat girl is IT." Everyone stopped running and looked at me. Lauren got red in the face and sat down. Gretchen walked solemnly over and explained to me, slowly and carefully, that I had said a very cruel thing, and that if I couldn't act like an adult I should go sit on the slide. At the time I couldn't understand my mistake. I never really thought Lauren was fat, so why should she be upset? When I became a chunky, insecure 6th grade girl, I finally got it. Fed my twin siblings, 3 years old at the time, aspirins. Each one took about 10 of them. They both had to be hospitalized. I was 5. When very young I watched a show on the early slave trade in America. Proceeded to tell my black friend I should own him. I used to call my grandma grams, which I then changed to grams of fat hearing that phrase on TV. I never saw how that could have been offensive until a few years later. When I was really little, like 3 or so, I knew 2 things were bad, being naked and flipping the bird. After every bath before my parents could dry me off I would run full speed through the house naked with both middle fingers flying. I'm such a square now. I had this dog when I was younger. She was my absolute best friend. I was that kinda kid who hung out with her dog all the time. We had adventures together. We traveled to mysterious places in our backyard together. We even spooned and slept on the living room floor. So when I was around 5 to 7 years old I took this bonding thing a little too far. And not like that before anyone supposes something. We kept her as an indoor-outdoor dog. She would use newspaper to go to the bathroom when she was inside. I began to want to bond with her so much I would eat and piss on the newspaper with her. I loved her and wanted to see the world through her eyes. So after months of this my grandmother one day asks me about it. She was living with us at the time and asked me essentially if I was eating and pissing alongside our dog. I lied and said no. However, I then in that moment realized my grandmother was the one responsible for picking up said newspapers. Only now do I realize I allowed my grandmother to pick up my dogs and my number 1s and number 2s for months upon months. Played I'll show you mine if you show me yours pretty much daily in preschool and kindergarten. I took an egg from the bird's nest so I thought like I'll grow it up and we will be the best friends ever. The egg cracked in my pocket. I was 6. Once when I was 7, my family went for dinner at another family's house. At dinner, I was told to sit next to a child who was in a wheelchair. And I asked why I had to have the broken one whilst my other siblings all got to sit next to kids who were perfectly healthy. My 7-year-old self did not quite understand exactly how terrible the comment was. Luckily I think the host family just explained what was wrong with their child in a way that I could understand. I think in the end we became quite good friends for about 4 hours until we had to leave. The worst thing I ever done, I mixed a pot of fake puke at home and then I went to this movie theater, hid the puke in my jacket, climbed up to the balcony and then, I made a noise like this, hooah 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 hooah, and then I dumped it over the side, all over the people in the audience, and then, this was horrible, all the people started getting sick and throwing up all over each other. I never felt so bad in my entire life. When in 7th grade, I passed by my high school and saw a letter in the mailbox. I see that it's addressed to my geography teacher and it looks personal because his name is handwritten. Stupid me took it home, read it and then threw it away. It seemed to be from a long lost love that wanted to rekindle whatever had happened in their past. So for no good reason there's a chance that I changed this man's life, robbing him of a potential lover. 12 years later, I still kick myself about it. When I was in elementary school, a kid in my class started hitting me with his jacket, so I took it away from him, threw it on the ground and said, "Stop hitting me, you freak." I was then sent to the principal's office where I was suspended for 3 days. When I got back I beat the shit out of this kid and got suspended again. Multiple years later I realized the reason I got into trouble for calling him a freak was because he was retarded. So I beat the shit out of a retarded kid. I begged my mom to pay for acting classes so I could be the next Disney Channel star. She, a young single mother in medical school, paid $4,000 for the classes. After 1 month I stopped complaining and decided I don't want to go to the next 2 months of classes. I really wish I could slap my bratty 11-year-old self and tell her to be more ducking grateful for everything her mother sacrifices for her. Also, it probably would have been nice for my mom to get 3 hours to herself a week. When I was about 8, I saw my friend's dad kissing my other friend's mom. My friend's dad was married. I asked my friend why her dad was always at my other friend's house. She asked her mom the same question. They got a divorce. I used to play throw everything at the cars without being caught with my friends. I was quite of an asshole and I regret a lot of things I have done during my childhood. When I was in 5th or 6th grade I had a dirty dream about a girl in class I had a crush on. Long story short, I told a friend of mine who then proceeded to tell the whole class. It was embarrassing as it. Another kid in class, a bit of an outcast, tried to comfort me by telling me that he had sex with his stepbrother, who I think was a teenager at that point. I took that information and told it to the class in the hopes that it diverted attention from me. I knew it was bad pretty shortly after that and have felt horrible ever since. My sister was diagnosed with cancer and we used to go to the hospital every day to see her. I was young and didn't fully understand the concept of cancer and what could happen. She ended up losing her leg and came to stay at the house to visit. I was with a friend and wanted to go to his house but my parents wouldn't let me and I got mad. I hate talking about this, but I started making fun of her. The chemo had made her lose all her hair so I called her a bald-headed biscuit. She ended up passing away not soon after. To this day I regret it and pray every day that she was here so I could apologize. I love you sis, I'm sorry. There was an elderly man at church named Rudy. I was just a 5-year-old when I knew him, and I was very shy as a little girl. Rudy always wanted to give me a hug when he saw me, but in general I never allowed that from anyone but my mom or my dad. At first I tried dodging him, then I'd run through his arms. Every single time when he tried to hug me, all I wanted to do was escape the clutches of a person I didn't know well enough to hug. He made a joke about it, and would then try to hug me as a joke each time, making it really easy for me to run through his arms. It became a game of failed catch, I suppose. I wish I had hugged him. He was a sweet man and I hate that I dodged him intentionally. When I was 8, I played with the neighbors who were 16 and 17. The older boy antagonized me during our Super Soaker fight to the point where rocks were being thrown. I don't remember what drove me to throw handfuls of rocks aimlessly, but the neighbor stood there tossing one at a time accurately. Eventually he hit me straight in the dome and I ran home crying. This part is blurry. I walk into the bathroom crying, plotting my revenge. Unzip my pants and fill up my Super Soaker with all the fury I had in my tiny unit. I walk outside with a mix of rage and confidence thinking I'm going to blast this itch and get him back for what he's done to me. Meanwhile he is getting scolded by his parents, and at an attempt of good faith, he sees me with my water gun and walks outside with his mouth gaping open to accept my revenge. I piss in his mouth via Super Soaker, a priceless look of realization, and the words I'll never forget. P. He shot me with P. I ran home and hid. When I was 10 I started having sex with my 8-year-old cousin. It continued for about 4 years until she finally fessed up to her mother. Our parents put an immediate stop to it. They're still very tight family and interact with each other regularly. From time to time my mom will suggest I come along for family dinners or to spend time with my cousin. I always refuse and wonder if he understands what she's suggesting. Sometimes I used to go along and I'd still talk to my cousin, but it was super awkward. Now, I don't go along at all. It's not right. Now I realize what kind of emotional damage that kind of sibling abuse causes. I live with the fact that I inflicted a lifetime of suffering. I wish there was something I could do to make it right. Smashed 20 grand worth of my grandmother's jewelry with a hammer after hearing on TV that diamonds were the hardest thing on earth. I always was one for experimentation. I put a nail in the middle of the road because I thought cars should be on one side or the other. I sat there and watched it for an hour. Some guy in a company truck popped his tire on it and then I went inside. I called one of my white female classmates the N-word without knowing what it meant. I used to take rides from strangers all the time. I had a few close calls and I am as amazed as anyone that I am still alive. Once I played in the drawer of my parents' razors in their bathroom. My mom walked in and found my hands covered in blood. Also in preschool, I had a dream that one of my friends punched my on picture day, and the day after I came home and told my mom this. She contacted the school and we had a sit down with the principal and my friend and our moms. My friend kept denying he hit me, but I insisted. During this meeting I realized it was a dream, but I never said anything. Fruit Nation. In middle school, my friends and I would save all of our fruit until it was time to leave lunch. Then, as the stampede rushed past, we would drop all of our fruit on the ground where it would be smashed and smeared everywhere. This went on for months. We were never caught. Those poor janitors. I was mad at my sisters one day and decided to carve bored to death 97's sister is stupid on the wood windowsill in our shared bedroom. To ease suspicion I also carved bored to death 97 is stupid onto the windowsill. It is still there to this day. We used to make fun of a kid in my grade school who smelled and was held back a couple years. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just different. Feels terrible now. Ran into him a few years back and he was a friendly, good guy. Although he never did well in school, he picked up a trade and he's a mechanic now. When I was in the 3rd grade, there was this kid with autism who loved to play tag. He couldn't say anything other than tag. Everything else was little groaning sounds, like mum. One day, me and several other kids were playing tag with him and he ran up the jungle gym to try to not get tagged. He ended up going over the bars to face down. As one of the other kids slowly moved up to tag him and I was on the ground waiting to tag him. The kid was clearly scared now, as he didn't want to get tagged but he didn't want to jump down either. And so he started freaking out. Luckily one of the security guards faculty members who watches the kids came over and shooed us away so he could get down safely. The jungle gym isn't that tall. It's like 6 feet in height. But I felt like it years later remembering it, since I kind of enjoyed him getting frightened. Hell, even now remembering it, I feel like it. I really wish I still knew the kid so I could try apologizing to him or his family. Used to play chicken with traffic, as in wait till the cars got as close as I dared, then I ran over the street. My friends and I used to shoot Roman candles at random people that were walking down the sidewalk. Rather tame, but I named my snake Herpes. I was thinking herpetology. Snakes? Herpes. Of course my parents let me keep the name and I took him around while being very proud of myself. And then this came up the first time I brought someone home for a date. When I was in either kindergarten or 1st grade I touched a kid's D on the bus in exchange for his Spiderman gummies. I was hungry and those were some damn good gummies. I walked into the kitchen after seeing a commercial and asked my mom if my face was the face of erectile dysfunction, referencing a commercial I had just seen. She told me never to say it again. My brother was really angry at Frogger because he was awful at playing computer games, and he was bouncing in excessive frustration in his chair as he was jumping. I placed a sharp pen under his butt, The scream that followed was even sharper than the pen. The pen went 3 inches into his right butt cheek, and he now has a horrible scar. I laughed at him as he cried. Playing mechanic with my female neighbor. We were 5 at the time, and I would get on my back and look up her skirt so I could repair her car. I hope she doesn't remember. I would lock my cousin inside the dark basement at his old house in the countryside. I would stand outside the basement door and listen to the laughter from inside. After a while I would open the door and let in the light. After all these years I still can't figure out who he thought was wrestling with him. Friends and I would steal piles of fresh wood from houses being built to make forts and bike ramps in the woods. I used Internet Explorer for 5 years without knowing other browsers even existed. When I was 3 or 4, I thought my goldfish were unable to sleep because they were always swimming, so I took them out of the fish tank, laid them on my pillow, and tucked them in. Eventually my mom came in the room and frantically put them back into the water. Out of the 7 or so, roughly half survived. Sorry fish. I was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white kid. I told everyone in my preschool that my dad was black. Turns out he's just a really tan white guy. Not too horrible, but hurtful. When I was about 6, I was playing on the floor next to my mom. It struck me suddenly how big her thighs were, and I looked at her and said, "Who baby, you have some fat thighs." I thought I was being funny, but she looked so sad that I immediately realized I had said something bad. 15 years later and I still feel bad when I think about it. I used to masturbate in public without realizing how disgusting it might have been. Like, not on the street or anything, but in the back of a restaurant, or on the couch watching TV. I remember the day at school we were told what masturbating was. I remember the exact moment I realized why we were asked to leave from so many different establishments or sent to bed early. I drew on a kid's face who I thought passed out sleeping in my 5th grade class. Years later I found out he was having a type of seizure. At age 10 I shut off the water for every house in my subdivision. I used to gruesomely decapitate the giant ants I found in my backyard. I used to catch dragonflies and then rip off half their wings to tame them. Then I'd stick a blade of grass in their mouths to watch them bite it off. I still feel bad for those poor little guys. 5-year-olds are stupid. I used to chew on trees like a beaver. It's probably why my teeth are so ducked up now.